Hi, this is the latest episode of Football Talk with the Silverfox Hustle podcast. I'm Shasi, and don't forget, click on the follow and subscribe button on the various platforms that you are listening to this podcast on. Now, today it's an interesting episode because we're going to talk about injuries, football specific injuries, and along the way, we are also going to talk about rehab. We're also going to talk about maybe prevention, whether is there a way to prevent injuries in the first place, and also the connection between the surface of pitches and injuries, of course, whether there's any connection. And here to talk about all that is the co-founder of Physio Circle. He's also the physiotherapist there, Mr. Shoban Rahulapaskaran. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Sasi. How's it going?
It's good. I've been good, keeping busy myself. But can you please tell me, how did you get into physiotherapy?
Okay. I mean, that's a good story.
Yeah.
Okay, it's probably not going to be what the answer everyone expects. Okay. So I'm from UK, growing up in London.
Yeah.
So similar system. We have GCSE kind of O levels at 16. Then you choose your A level subjects or whatever it is here, and then you apply to uni. During that time, I think every Tamil or Indian parent or Sri Lankan, they want you to do medicine, right? So that was not for me. My number one, my grades definitely not good enough for it.
Yeah.
And then number two is just not for me. So at that point, I'm no idea what I want to do. I think sometimes it's a bit unfair at 17, 18 to decide what you want to do for the rest of your life. And then the way it is in the UK, just get any degree, you do relatively well in it, then you can go into postgrad, whatever. You want to do postgrad med, you want to go teaching.
Yeah.
Banks will take you and put you in a graduate scheme. So I was like, okay, let's just pick a degree. Physio was my choice.
Pick a degree.
Just pick a degree and go with it. And physio was my choice because it was free. It was a free degree. And I thought, okay, I'm no burden.
How does this work? Free degree?
So not enough physios in the UK at that point.
Really?
So not enough physios, not enough nurses, not enough occupational therapists, radiographers, all these kind of allied health professions. Not enough. We've got a massive shortage. So to attract local kind of students or British students, they just made it a free degree. And I was like, great, okay, no student loans. You're going to give me a bit of money as well to study from the NHS. This is great. Maybe I'll enjoy it. Maybe I'll end up doing this as a career. Halfway through the degree, there's like NHS cuts. And so it's a few years after all that financial crisis. So then all the jobs are halved or cut by 80%. So you got all these students on a free degree, but there's no jobs for them. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's how I ended up in physio. I just needed a degree and see where it goes from there.
And how did you get to Singapore, by the way?
So in my final year, the Singapore government actually came, or Singapore Ministry of Health or whoever came to uni. They set up like a recruitment day.
Okay.
Talk about Singapore, what's great, come live here, come work here. So I took it as just interview practice and just get some practice under my belt. Got an offer, and then they put me in Changi. So I was like, okay, you're giving me a job for at least 3 years, you're paying for my flight, you're giving me a bit of housing allowance.
Brilliant.
I can't even get a job in London at the moment. Yeah, I'll take it.
Brilliant. And never looked back since.
I mean, it was meant to go back after a year, but then I met my wife, and then met my girlfriend, who's now my wife. Now it's 11 years now. Yeah.
Beautiful, man.
Yeah.
Now let's get into Physio Circle first, right? Before we talk about specific football stuff. You're the co-founder, yeah? And how did this begin? Physio Circle itself.
I mean, it started in lockdown. Yeah, so the idea came about in lockdown. So prior to that, just quick summary, I was in Changi for a few years. Then the physio who I kind of looked up to, she moved into private. So she asked me, do I want to come with her? So I followed her into private there for a few years. She moved off to Australia. So then I started running that clinic for my boss as just a manager there. Moved on to another clinic where I was the director. So helped set up a couple of clinics there as well. And I set up one and then look after another. And then during COVID, I was like, I've been doing this for other people. Maybe I should
be your own boss, man.
Yeah, try and. As in, when you do stuff for other people, you're always still limited a little bit.
Yeah.
You can't put all your ideas into place. So my wife said, if you're complaining and the only person, you should just do your own thing. Yeah.
Beautiful.
So just put some ideas to paper, and 3 years later, we're here.
Brilliant, man, brilliant. Now, because I was looking through the website, and you guys do physiotherapy, rehab, strength and conditioning, sports massage as well.
Yeah.
And there's something interesting that caught my eyes, the mindful mobility part, the yoga and the mobility flow, right?
Yeah.
Home therapy and stuff. So How does this work? It's very interesting. The mindful mobility thing.
So I mean, that's run by our yoga teacher Angie,
Okay.
who works for us as well.
Yeah.
So she runs a few classes a week in the clinic. So I mean, the reason why we wanted stuff like this, we also have Pilates, we also have pitch rehab as well, and stuff like that. We wanted to add different things that will be adjuncts to your rehab.
Okay.
And,
Okay.
and we also have strength and conditioning, just to keep you away from coming back to the physio.
Yeah.
The idea is let's equip you with the skills.
Yeah.
We get you better, educate you, then put you into a pathway. Whether you need to get stronger, whether it's more kind of mindfulness or kind of yoga or Pilates, or you need more stuff on the pitch. There's just different streams for you to go into,
Yeah.
and then build you up so that you don't come back to us a few weeks later or a few months later. Yeah.
Beautiful. I think the education part is important as well. It's I think you're right. When you players they get injured, they come in and they just stick to a normal rehab program, if you like, right? And then there's the other things to complement that is as well. And I think this mindful mobility thing comes into play as well. It's brilliant, right? Now you guys are linked with Hougang United as well.
Yeah.
How did that? How's this arrangement like, or is it a contract basis, or what is it like?
Just going into the background of it, community is a huge thing for
Yeah.
us. So our first clinic is in Serangoon. I live in Punggol.
Okay.
So northeast, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, and then at the same time, we love football. Yeah, but we weren't in the local scene. We weren't well versed with the local scene.
Okay.
I mean, if you asked me 3 years ago, I'd probably be able to name you a few players only. Yeah. So then, one or two of the coaches at Hougang, the fitness coach, the sports trainers, we knew already, just from the kind of health and fitness scene is small. And they reached out to us and said, "Hey, would you guys be interested in working with Hougang?"
Yeah.
And from there, we took on a kind of a sponsorship deal, where the players, if they get injured, they come in for treatment, rehab,
Yeah.
etc. We provide our physio services there. We're on for about 3 years. We've done 2 years. We've got another year left.
Yeah. Okay.
Hopefully, it carries on for a lot longer.
How's that been? It's great. It's good.
Oh, it's good for us. I mean, there's 2 point of views that we wanted. We wanted a business point of view and then
Yeah, of
a
course.
professional point of view for the staff as well. So from a business point of view, it's great because lots of awareness about us now. People pick up football injuries. A lot of people have said, "Oh, I've seen you guys at Hougang Physios or seen your name up on the board, or the players have spoken
Nice.
about you." And we had a lot more people come in, and that's helped us establish the kind of us as the place to go for football injuries, whether you're an amateur player or you're a kid or whether you're a professional player who needs an outlet or something, etc. Yeah.
Brilliant.
From a professional point of view, we wanted our staff, including me, to have exposure to work with athletes at a high level, to be under pressure,
Okay.
to get players back to playing fast or whatever not. And it's been great because clinically we've all grown. We've had the ability to go on tour with them last year, AFC, this year.
Nice.
One of my colleagues, Daniel, went for the Sabah game last week.
Okay.
So it's given us exposure as well and helped us grow as physios.
Brilliant. Now let's talk football and injuries. Now, what are the most common football injuries based on research? Or let's talk about the experience part. This the past 2 years with Hougang. From experience, the most common football injuries that you guys are always treating or facing.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say just looking back at the Hougang and the men's and women's of the last couple
Right.
of years, easily muscular strains
Okay.
and then easily rolled ankles.
Okay.
Those are the very so muscle strains. Your simple stuff like a hamstring or a quad strain.
Okay.
Not so much a calf strain, very rare. And then very common. I mean, I'd say every couple of months we have a rolled ankle or
Okay.
a bad landing and you twist your ankle kind of thing. Yeah.
Right. Those are the common ones, especially the muscular ones, right? The quads, the hamstrings, especially, and then the groin injuries as well.
Correct,
So those are very really common. Based on research,
It's the same.
Yeah?
I'd say it matches up the same. I'd say the muscle strains, like you said, quads, hamstring, groin.
Yeah.
I'd say hamstring and groin more for footballers. Definitely, those are
Okay.
the two. And if you look back and if I open up my files, those are probably the two that have popped up the most in terms of muscle
Nice.
injuries. We've had a few quad ones from just shooting the ball or overextending, etc.
Okay.
And then easily 8 to 10 rolled ankles. From minor injuries to longer ones.
obviously you guys are with Hougang, so you are there, and every single day, almost every single day with the players, and you know what's all about in terms of the football part, right? And obviously you do take in people from all walks of life, athletes from different sports and whatever. What are the differences in terms of injury-wise, right? take for example football and maybe a basketball player, right? Is there like distinct differences in terms of injuries sustained? Obviously, the hands and the feet are the two different,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you look at basketball, probably a lot more kind of finger fractures, hyperextension injuries.
Right.
You're shooting the ball a lot more, so you might get some rotator cuff or shoulder issues. But if you look at the legs for both those sports, I mean, basketball meant to be non-contact, but is it really?
Is it really?
Is it really? Yeah. So I mean, you still see a lot of rolled ankles.
Yeah.
You still see a lot of ACLs, a lot of Achilles injuries in both sports as well. So I mean, in terms of low limb injuries, I'd say both have similar types of injuries. Definitely, maybe you might get a bit more Achilles in basketball compared to football. But there's a lot of NBA players and professional players with ACL injuries just from poor landing or etc.
You're right, and I'm just looking at. And I'm watching basketball. I don't play it, and I watch the game. Right. In terms of the lower limb injuries, I think they are more. It's more dangerous playing basketball. The fact that I think intensity wise as well, because they're always back and forth in a very short space, and the timing as well. You got to go back and forth, and the twisting and turning, the checking and going, because you're doing it almost every other.
It's like 5-10 seconds to suddenly a change in direction.
Because for footballers, you can hide sometimes because it's
a bigger pitch, more players,
and then the ball is on over like 30-40 meters away. You still resting.
You get a breather.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think basketball is the possibility of you getting injured in terms of a rolled ankle, a twisted knee, especially. It's more, isn't it?
Actually, basketball was my main sport at school. I used to play 5-6 times a week.
Any injuries?
My ankles are all wrecked now. I don't think I have any ligaments left in my ankles. Right. But but you're right. Yeah. I mean, that's why basketball has rolling subs, right? Otherwise, I think there'll be a lot more injuries. Yeah.
No, you talk about ankle injuries and stuff, right? We go through the specific ones like the hamstring injuries, for example, right? Is there anything that is worst off in the SPL here in Singapore? Maybe the ACL, obviously, right? But what have you seen like the worst so far in the 2 years that you've been with Hougang?
I mean, this year we've had some bad injuries this year. I mean, Kiki's broken wrist earlier in the season. Anders dislocating his elbow.
Right.
I mean, we've had some accidents that we can't prevent. Because it's contact or you've landed poorly and stuff. I mean, last season, fortunately, we haven't had any ACLs, like fresh ACLs in the time I've been here. I mean, Andre Moritz in the AFC last year, he had a kind of a sprain of the ACL. We thought it was a lot worse.
Indraki before that as well?
Yeah, so Indraki was before our time.
Right.
Yeah, but we did his rehab for over the last couple of years. Shawal had a bad ankle injury last year in Topayo. Not going to say anything about Topayo bitch, but yeah.
Oh, just say it, man. It's terrible. I will say it.
So I mean, fortunately, we haven't had awful injuries. We've seen some crazy. I mean, we've seen some stuff, but it's manageable stuff.
Okay. This is outside of football, right? You've been a physiotherapist for some time now. What's the worst you've seen? Worst injury you've seen?
Oh, I had one guy once, and this always comes to me straight away. He was a case referred over to the clinic when I was first in private, and it was a home therapy case, so I had to see him almost daily because he couldn't come to the clinic. So basically, he was driving in India, and the road signs had not been put up, and they had dug the road out or something. So there's like a big ditch kind of thing, and he had just driven into that. The steering wheel had then almost collapsed into his thigh, his femur, and smashed the femur into like multiple pieces.
What?
Yeah, and then he just can't walk, can't bend his knee, so much pain. And we did one or two.
So this is after
he's had surgery in India and come over back here, and he's had looked at something's not right. They said maybe it's good to just get a review from a doctor here, and just surgery had not been done well. Had to go in for another 8 to 10 hour procedure.
What?
I mean, it took a long time to even get him back to walking. That's the worst I've seen. That's what I would not want to see again in terms of musculoskeletal.
It's a great seg because we talk about rehab, right? Now, tell us at Physio Circle specifically, right? From the time a player gets injured, for example, he gets a muscle tear in the hamstring, right? From the point that he gets injured until the point that he's cleared to play? What goes through at Physio Circle and the phases, how this works?
So it's like as in one of the Hougang players?
Yeah.
You mean?
Okay.
So we are not there most trainings.
Okay.
So we have Thomas, the sports trainer, we have
Right.
Station and other physios there. So if they pick up an injury, they assess and see whether do they need a doctor's
Okay.
assessment to see how bad it is, or if it's a minor injury, they get sent over to us, and then they come into the clinic,
Okay.
and that's when we'll do a more in-depth assessment,
Right.
come up with a rehab plan, update the health medical department at Hougang and the coaches to know how long they're out for, what's the expected time of recovery, when
Okay.
they can come back to training,
Okay.
and it could be, for example, hamstring strain, acute management first. Work on reducing pain, improving the range of motion, mobility again, getting them used to walking, move on to the next phase, which is probably strength building up the strength difference. Again, we will assess the strength to see how much weaker is it. Of course, if it's a grade 1 or grade 2 injury, we know how long tissues take to heal. So based on that, based on the clinical kind of outcomes as well, once the strength is back, we move on to the kind of return to sports phase. And that's like on the pitch rehab. So we're very lucky that we use the cage at Kallang, who've given us that place to
Nice.
do the return to sports rehab,
Okay.
work on football drills, work on acceleration, deceleration, change of direction. And when we're confident that they're doing it in an environment that they feel confident and safe, secure, then we'll let them go back into progressive training. So that could be non-contact training first, to then maybe training with a bib on so that no one, they can play the kind of games, but no one will
pink
tackle.
bib.
Maybe that, yeah, pink or white bib, whatever. So they don't get tackled, and then progressively into full training, and then there'll be a return to kind of match testing done by the S&C specialist at Hougang. And if all that's clear, they'll go back into full games.
That's nice. And tell us a little bit about the grades of, for example, hamstring again, right? So for the people at home who's watching this as well, tell us the difference in the grade tears.
So I mean, think about it as 3 grades. Maybe
Right.
partial is like up to 25%.
Okay.
You're out for 1 to 2 weeks.
Okay.
Maybe the grade 2 is like much higher, 50, 60%, etc. That could be anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, and then a complete rupture. We're thinking about months. Yeah.
What I like about you guys is also the part where you had this you have this arrangement with the cage, for example, to do your the field training as you come back, slowly come back into that. That's great, right? It's because it gives you an opportunity to actually then assess them away from the team that's training, sometimes, and that's important as well.
Yeah, it builds up that confidence for the player as well, that there isn't anyone looking at me. I can spend my time working on it. But it's also great for the amateur player.
Right.
For example, imagine you've torn your quads, you've torn your hamstrings, or whatever. A few months out, what we don't want is you just do the rehab in the clinic. You'd pass some sports test and say, okay, go back to play. But you have not graded them back to the sport. You have not graded them back to football. You haven't worked on the change of direction or the ball work, etc. And there's sometimes when we see these amateur guys on the pitch, then we realize, oh, actually, the stability is off, their balance is off, they're very fearful to load that leg. Then we bring them back to the clinic, work on that, and it helps just reduce that re-injury rate.
Yes.
And it's been good for the whole spectrum.
That's important, but I just want to ask you something that just came to my mind, right? Psychologically, how important is it for a player who's injured, especially those long-term ones, for example, an ACL, right? To be away from the environment where the players are actually playing? Because I read this somewhere. I think it was Arsene Wenger or something like that. He didn't want his players to be in the vicinity of all the other players when they are playing and tackling and all, and psychologically it hurts you sometimes, the players, because there are my teammates playing and I'm here, I can't even walk properly, right? So how important that plays in the rehab of a player?
I think psychology is super important. I mean, someone who's had an ACL rehab, a long time out, if you're not mentally right, if you're not ready to make that tackle or make that play, etc., and you're overthinking, you are thinking too much about the body and not the game. Your energy is being put into the wrong place, and the ability to pick up an injury is much higher. At the same time, I can imagine the flip side. If you've been away from the team for a long time, psychologically that's very very down. So as soon as they can get some ball work, some pitch work, it's kind of nice to go back to the training and do the work there. The team sees you as well, that you're coming back.
Good point.
Yeah, so there's both ways. Good
point. This is a question that I'll just get straight into it.
Go for
have
it.
you had any pressure from coaches to say, maybe you've given the player 3 weeks and the coach comes to you and says, 2 weeks. We need him back by 2 weeks. Get him done by 2 weeks. Get him fixed by 2 weeks. How do you have you had that, or if you have that in the future, how would you react to this?
I mean, I think at Hougang we actually haven't.
Great.
Yeah, so we worked for three who I think are great guys. Clement, Fidaros, Marco.
Yeah.
And I'd love to work for any of these guys again. Reason being, they are super respectful of the medical department. They take the time to come and understand understand what's going on with the player as well. And if we say we can't, he needs a bit longer,
Right.
then they're like, okay. Of course, they'll be like, I mean, if you can, that'd be great. But at the same
Yeah, of
time,
course.
if you say no, they understand.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't want to get someone injured and
Nice.
be out for a long time. I mean, I've heard of other places where maybe, I'm not going to mention names and
Okay,
stuff,
okay.
but yeah, where the pressure's been on and said, you need to get them back ASAP.
Now,
and stuff.
let's put you in the spot. Let's say you move on to, and it's not only in Singapore. Let's say you go elsewhere, anywhere, right?
Yeah.
And you get a pressure like this. How would you react? Like,
I think we're in a difficult situation because you need to think of the club, but naturally, as a healthcare professional, your priority is going to be a player. And I will always still lean towards the protection of the player as well.
Right.
So if that means me taking on more heat,
yeah,
I'd rather take the heat, protect the player, get them back instead of pushing them and they get re-injured again. Because that's more heat on both of us after that anyway.
true.
But I think it's laying down expectations and understanding as well. If I'm new to a club, and say if we're not at Hougang, say we're another club in the next year or next 2 years, I would want to get to know
Okay.
the coach a lot better, and then for them to understand how we do things and
Even
what we do
I,
things.
I think even before the contract is signed, I think that's important, right?
Yeah,
you
yeah,
speak
yeah.
about all these things and get it out of the way. And
you want to understand the culture, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So if they understand that, look, we're not going to push the player, but if the ability is there to push, we will push.
Yeah, of course.
And we'll be honest, we push the players more than an amateur player do. Because they want to be pushed as well, players. I've never worked with a player that wants to take it easy.
Yeah.
So far, anyway.
Now let's talk about Topayo. No, kidding. Let's talk about pitches in general.
yeah,
Right? It's a major topic here in Singapore. And even if you go elsewhere, is this thing where it's the artificial pitches versus natural grass debate, right? Firstly, what does the research tell you? I'm sure you've gone to researchers and whatnot. What does the research tell us in terms of the different kinds of pitches with respect to injuries sustained by football players?
Actually, I mean, it's mixed.
Yeah.
And there's some articles that will say you play an artificial pitch and you pick up more injuries.
Okay.
And there's some research that shows, less injuries. I mean, every article has its limitation. I mean, this year there was a big review. That's probably one of the biggest that's been done, looking into all of the studies over the last, 10, 15 years and removing studies that were poor, keeping studies that are similar together. And they found that artificial pitches actually have no similar to less injury compared to grass pitches.
Okay.
For men, for women, for amateur players, whatever. No, but they didn't look into certain factors like are they the quality of the artificial pitch, the boots used on the pitches, are the players playing on those pitches regularly, etc. So then you could say yes, the artificial pitches have less injury, but there's so many different factors that might be specific to Singapore or another country.
Yeah.
Or are we using the right boots, etc. That might risk the injury.
Right. Any specific stats here in Singapore? Like I don't know. It beats me, right? Like in terms of the number of players who've gotten injured, maybe at an artificial pitch as compared to somewhere else. Is there?
I mean, not yet, but if the SPL want me to do a study, I'm happy to do something.
Really? I
It'd
think
be
you
great.
should, man.
I think it'd be something interesting.
Yeah.
Because then hopefully that will help, the decision makers, the policy makers, be able to make better decisions.
But again, it's a mixed bag as well, right? Like some players do not like the artificial pitch.
I think most players don't like it.
Okay, and then there's some they probably grew up on playing on artificial. The younger ones, right? So I don't think they've like played on really good grass before or whatever. So they might maybe prefer the artificial pitches, right? In your opinion, does it affect the injuries and whatever?
I feel that if a player feels that the artificial pitch is going to make them injured, then they're more susceptible to injury.
So it's a psychological thing more than anything else.
I think there's an element of it.
Yeah.
There's definitely an element of it in play. You're a bit worried that the pitch is hard. Can I push more? Can I turn more? Can I run more, etc.
Yeah.
And that might alter the way you play, and that might pick up injuries as well.
Right.
It doesn't help that there's been a lot of injuries on artificial pitches, which increases the fear as well.
Okay.
But in terms of, we've been at Jalan Besar this year, and in terms of bad injuries, bar the kind of fractures that we had, which are, we
Yeah.
can't control. We haven't had, more. I mean, if you look back, we haven't had more tendon problems.
Okay.
We haven't had any ACL so far. Touch wood.
Right.
We haven't had. I mean, it's been pretty similar to playing at Shoban last year as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Sometimes it's a little unfair sometimes because when certain players they play on Jalan Besar Stadium at the Jalan Besar Stadium and then they get injured and then straight away on social media is just change the pitch, this and that, but there's so many different elements that go into a player sustaining an injury or getting an injury, right?
Yeah.
It's so that there's so many things, and you're right about the grade of the artificial pitches,
The
as
quality,
well.
yeah.
The quality of the.
I think
pitches,
FIFA is looking into that as well. I think they're going to be putting out some sort of quality assurance, as in. So hopefully that means the pitches that we bring into Singapore will be of FIFA grade, which will then help the players more.
Listen. In my opinion, I just prefer natural grass. Not because of the injury part. It's just
nicer.
You just play on grass.
Yeah,
Simple
football
as that,
should be
right?
on grass. Yeah,
exactly.
as it is in England and Europe and stuff.
Yeah.
Unless you can't
Yeah.
grow the grass, like
Right.
maybe Eastern Europe or something like that.
They do here, in Singapore. With the national stadium right now, the Sports Hub, they do grow it and then they transfer it when a game, gets.
I guess it comes cost as well, right?
Yeah, but-
management.
Yeah, but maintenance-wise as well, you gotta weigh the pros and cons, and obviously the injuries part come into play. Yeah. Now, prevention of injuries, right? Is it even possible from a
Yeah.
physiotherapy?
That's a good question. I mean, I think prevention is the wrong word.
Right.
It should be reduction. So reduction in risk.
Okay.
And so everything you do, say example, we give you a program and say it's a prevention, there's still a chance you're going to pick up the injury.
Of course.
Yeah. So is it then prevention? What we're trying to do is just reduce the
Reduce.
risk of picking up the injury.
Right.
So if we can reduce the risk by building up strength, getting your sleep and recovery right, your nutrition right, wearing the right boots on the pitch, whatever. All of these are strategies in play to reduce the risk of injury. And if we can drop it 30, 40, 50%, that's
Okay.
great.
What are the physical stuff that you guys do at Physio Circle to reduce the risk?
So I mean, we will look at a player, and in an ideal way, hopefully next year, what we'll do is we'll get them in for preseason testing.
Right.
So we will get numbers for quads, hamstring, groin, your glutes, etc., mobility, flexibility, the way you jump, land, to see how the force is even through both legs, and looking at previous history. So from there, we will look at stuff like, is the quads to hamstring ratio the right number?
Right.
Is the groin to kind of adductor to abductor ratio the right number? There are certain numbers that will then show you if it's too high, too low, more risk for injury. And then we'll be able to then say, these are the things you need to work on, build up the strength to reduce the risk of injury in play.
Right,
If we know you've had 4 ankle injuries last year, then we'll get you on stability work, building up strength for the ankles, the lower legs, and make sure you're wearing the right boots and doing rehab based on that, so that you can do that through the season to reduce injuries.
It's pretty individual as well, isn't it?
Should be.
Yeah,
Yeah, it shouldn't be a blanket one.
Right,
Yeah, it
right.
should be individualized. Otherwise, you might reduce a little bit, but it's not
Right.
specific. Yeah.
Listen, this is great, and anyway, this is being done professionally
Yeah,
in Europe,
yeah.
and and it should be done, and it has to be done because, like you said, it's going to reduce the risk of somebody getting injured.
The players
most of
deserve
the
it.
time.
Yeah, the players deserve the right care so that they can be
Yeah.
their best, and that's what we should all be focusing on. Yeah.
Exactly, brilliant. And he keeps the player going the whole season. You don't their season is not disrupted in a way.
Yeah. You don't want their career to be cut short because they've had multiple injuries and stuff. Yeah.
Right. So do you equip the players with information like that as well? Like, for example, someone comes in injured, right? And then on the road to rehab, is there things that...
Yeah, I'd say that's one of what we want to focus on in the clinic, whether they're
Right.
professional or amateur. But like I said earlier, the different services that we have are different kind of pathways you go into. But education is key. Yeah, even if they don't complete their rehab, but they go away knowing what to do if this happens again, or
Right.
a few things to do before they play football, so to reduce, the amount of people who don't warm up before a five-a-side. I mean, do you see people? Very, very rare, unless they've had loads of injuries and they decide, I don't want to have another one. Yeah. So, I mean, those are the things that will not prevent injury, but reduce injury. And that's what we try and equip you with. Yeah.
I like this part because you spoke about the warming up part, right? What goes into a warm up? It could be a five-a-side game. It could be an 11v11, an amateur game, a professional game. What goes into a warm up? What is the first thing that a player should do when he goes into a warm up?
I mean, I think guests understand what the warm-up is for. Yeah. So you're trying to get warm, right? Is in the word.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So you're, getting the blood flow going through the muscles that you're going to be using. You're mimicking similar movements to the sport, getting the heart rate up, and just getting the body ready to play the game. You shouldn't be exhausted after a warm up.
Right.
I mean, if your warm up is like 20 minutes and you're gassed, then something's not right for the
Right.
amateur player.
Right.
But even 5 to 10 minutes, starting off with easy jogs, a little bit of resistance band stuff, hopping and jumping. So you're practicing your landing to prevent kind of rolling ankles. That's good enough already.
There's this buzzword. It's not a buzzword. It's something that's been used a lot in recent times, right? The activation drills, right? So tell us, for people who are at home watching and listening to this, what is an activation drill specifically for?
I mean, it's once again in the word, just to get the muscle working the way it should be. If you are a desk-bound worker and you've just worked an 8 to 10 hour shift, and then you got a game at the cage at 7 o'clock, you're not going to rock up and just start shooting. Right? You need to.
Well, they do.
Well, they do, and then
Many
they come,
do.
and then somehow they turn up with us. Yeah. What we want is, if you come up 10-15 minutes early, just bring a band, start doing some stuff that'll activate the quads, the hamstring, the glutes.
Yeah.
Go into some light jogs, go into passing. I mean, if your players are late, a little bit of rondo does no harm as well.
Yeah, of course.
It just gets you doing the same movements that you need to do. Yeah.
In your time here, right? In Singapore, and dealing with a club so far, but of course many players who've come in from maybe another club who's gone to Physio Circle or whatever. What kind of problems have you faced doing your job? Your duty as it can be anything, right? So what kind of problems have you faced
In a professional setting,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
like
professional setting.
professional
Yeah,
players kind of
yeah.
thing. I mean, if we go back to psychology, if it's a bad injury or they're repeated injuries,
Yeah.
picking up a player with a low mood or low motivation is tough.
Right.
I mean, at the end of the day, sometimes as the physios, we're there to support them, right? And if you're away from the club, we can't look at it just physically. We're pushing them mentally, trying to drive their motivation, find their why for what we're doing, because it can be lonely, right?
Yeah,
So that's
exactly.
tough. From a physio point of view, when they're in that phase, sometimes the effort and energy level is not what we want as well. Then you get frustrated sometimes.
How do you overcome this?
I mean, sometimes you got to be harsh. Just ask them, what do you want? Like, if this is not what you want, then what are we doing here?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just having that conversation and helping them get out of that.
Why do you think players are like that? Like you say what, low levels of motivation for them when they come in, right?
When they're injured.
When they're injured, obviously, right? So what do you think goes into their mind? Because if I'm injured, I'm going to you to get my rehab done. I'll do anything.
Yeah. I mean, it's not often. It would be like if you had multiple injuries or you keep getting re-injured and it's just getting frustrated, upset.
Okay.
Am I going to ever get back to what I want to be?
Yeah.
And this is at amateur players, this is normal people to
of
professional.
course.
It happens daily for us. I mean, and sometimes the frustration comes onto us as well. Like, you're meant to help me, but it's I'm not improving at the rate I want to improve. Sometimes it's you say, I'm sorry, mate, you're out for 6 to 8 weeks, and they want to be back in 4 to 5 weeks, and the expectation levels there make you down a bit as well.
This next question is probably related to the one that you just answered, right? It's what's your pet peeve as a physio?
Just generally, I will always, and I speak the same probably for my team as well, will always put 100% in.
Right.
So if you're not going to put 100% in, if you come in next week and you say my pain is the same, and I say, oh, how was the home exercises? Did that cause more problems? They'll be like, oh, I didn't do it.
Okay.
That gets me.
Right.
Like, if you're paying me money to help you, and I've said it to patients before, look, I don't think you're in the right frame for rehab right now, and I don't want you to waste your money. And there are other patients who are waiting for slots as well. So if you're not going to put in the effort and time, then don't come back. Yeah, wait till you're ready, or and it could be because work is busy, you got to look after your kids, whatever. And if that's the case, I say, hey, look, let's take a break, do these things, and then when you have that 6 to 8 or 4 weeks, 6 weeks, come back. Yeah.
Your profession, right? It's a weird kind of thing, because professionally and business wise, you want business, obviously, right?
Of course,
you want people to come in, right? But you, at the same time, the people that come in, you don't want to be seeing them anymore, in terms of, because you've done your job.
But that's the beauty of it, right?
Yeah.
So you are trying to become not needed. Yeah. Like that should be the end game. If your aim is, I'm gonna get this guy in for 40 sessions and build up my revenue, then there's something fundamentally wrong as a physio. As even if you're a business owner, your core value should be, I want to get this guy better or person better, and they're not going to come back to me but we're going to do such a great job that they feel great. And if they have someone who gets injured, they will say these are the guys that you should go to.
Brilliant.
That's what we want.
Yeah, brilliant. That's exactly.
If that's not your value, then
Yeah.
you need to think about something else.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now, before we go, and any advice for footballers specifically who are coming back from a bad injury? You know, let's forget about the minor groins and whatever, because you are going to come back. I'm talking about the ACL, because sometimes it gets to a player, and after a while he gives up. Maybe what advice can you give to these players who are injured, long-term injury, maybe just got an ACL, who's going to get the knee done maybe next week? What advice would you give them?
This is away from the physical point of view, and we're talking about them. I would start to say, think about the mental battle first. Know that it's a long period of time out, and you need to. I always think it's nice, and I sometimes get my patients do this. Write down what are your motivators. Like, write down what's going to drive you, because if you have that on your Apple Notes or on paper or on your diary, whatever, on your bad days you can go back to that and think, this is the reason why I did this surgery. You find out what your why is. You use that why. You can use that as your strength. Find yourself good support structures. Of course, be involved in the plan for rehab. Don't be passive. Understand each stage. If it was me, I would want to know what stage 1, what are we doing, what are the outcomes, what do you need me to do, and then know what each stage entails, and be ready for it. From a physio point of view, we will also warn you, rehab is never linear. It's going to be up and down, physically, mentally, whatever not. And so the patient or the person needs to understand that completely as well.
Nice.
But just know what motivates you and stick to it.
Nice. Well, before we go, any plans for Physio Circle to expand? Maybe expand to the different clubs here in Singapore and whatever. Is that a conflict of interest if you do 2-3 clubs at the same time?
I think so. I mean, I think so. We're very loyal to Hougang. We do also work with the women's team, but we also work with Arion in the women's league. Because they're just down the road to us as well at the arena. So they're one of our local clubs. In terms of the men's league, I think we'll most likely stick with Hougang.
Right.
As long as we're wanted, hopefully for many years. And in terms of expansion to the clinic, probably not at the moment. We're just trying to double down on the quality of the work we're doing, the quality of the service pathways that we're providing, and just build into the community a lot more.
Shoban, tell us where you guys are at, so that people watching, listening to this, you're an amateur footballer or athlete or anyone or any walks of life, you can just drop in. Where can we find Physio Circle?
Locations wise, we are at Serangoon. We have one at Dhoby Ghaut in the old Pomo, and then at the Cage, I have a clinic there as well in Kallang. Unfortunately, the one in Bukit Timah is going closed. We have a small centre inside Speed gym there, but it's been taken away because Turf City's closing down, unfortunately, which I think it shouldn't be, but that's another topic another day. And then you can find us on Instagram at physiocircle.sg, and we do a lot of education content and videos on there.
Brilliant, man. Shoban, thanks, man, for being here.
Thank you very much
for sharing some insights on football specific injuries and the works, right? And I hope Physio Circle will do well going forward, and for you as well. And say hi to Ain and company at the clinic. She's been great for the IT team as well. This has been the latest episode of Football Talk with the Silverfox podcast. I will see you soon till the next episode.